君たちは
天空寺タケル、君が世界を救う鍵。
Why have you summoned me? Tell me your wish now.
俺の望みは決まっている。俺の望みは
No, I cannot grant any wish that would be beyond the power of a god.
Hi everyone, Krolika Kane here. And as your resident horror fanatic, I am here to educate you on ghosts. Supernatural horror is my jam. What? So, I'm actually not here to talk about ghosts. I'm here to talk about Kamen Rider Ghost. The ghosts in Kamen Rider Ghost are neither scary nor horrific. They're simply there as a means to an end. Why is Kamen Rider not doing horror right? They've already done it multiple times. Where is the fear factor? Where is the fright? Where is the torture? Oh, but wait. There is torture, just not the fun kind. Kaiju. You're not the god of monsters as your name states. You are a monster. Why did you make me watch the show? This is not the Kamen Rider I wanted. I asked for a specific title and you decided, hey, let's watch Kamen Rider for Halloween. Well, you know what? I hate you.
What's up everyone, I am the Kaiju no Kami, and I am kicking Halloween month 2021 off with Kamen Rider Ghost. Kamen Rider Ghost has an interesting production history. Toei hired a director and writer by the name of Takeru to helm their 2015 Kamen Rider series that would become titled Kamen Rider Ghost. The man came up with the basic premise. However, due to working on multiple projects at the same time while also being a lecturer at Nihon University, he was also unable to focus all of his attention on the show, and as such, required the assistance of two other writers, Nobuhiro Mori and Keiichi Hasegawa, to helm the show in his stead. Furthermore, it has been stated that Fukuda was quite mad at how little control he was given over creativity, as Bandai micromanaged every little detail to ensure there was plenty of merchandise to be had.
Take a look! We put the picture's name on everything! Merchandising! Merchandising! Where the real money from the movie is made.
The trouble didn't end there. Toei had teamed up with Amazon to make an Amazon Prime exclusive Kamen Rider series and decided to take away a portion of the money that had been budgeted for Ghost in order to produce this new show titled Kamen Rider Amazons. With all of these issues, did the show even stand a ghost of a chance? Or was it doomed to fail? Let's take a look at the series to find out. The heroes. Our main hero is the 18-year-old Takeru Tenkuji, who dies right in the first episode. That was fun while it lasted. Good night, everybody. Okay, obviously I'm joking. Well, at least about the review being done. Takeru, played by Shu Nishime, on the other hand, is actually dead. Upon dying, he meets an estranged hermit known as Sage, where he is given the ability to come back to the land of the living in order to defend it from an evil empire from another dimension that is set on conquering our world. Takeru also saves people by hugging them. Ugh. I'd rather just die than be hugged. Ugh. There is a catch. Takeru must collect 15 devices known as an icon within 99 days, otherwise he will pass on into the next life.
あと99日。
今日はもう終わりだから正確に言うとあと98日じゃ。
This is quite clever because while being a ghost may make him invincible in the traditional sense, as he cannot die again, it also means he has a time limit before he permanently dies.
もう死なないんじゃなかったの？
もうやられると死ぬほど痛い。
Or at least, that is what the show wants you to believe. Obviously, being a Toku show, we know how things are going to end, but the concept is still an intriguing one. In fact, I have to hand it to Fukuda for being able to come up with something truly exciting. It's not what you would expect from a superhero show of this caliber. Unfortunately, thanks to the aforementioned production issues, this show is a mess as it has no sense of pacing, and thanks to the multitude of writers, characters will sometimes act completely different from one episode to the next. Back to the story, Takeru receives an icon that allows him to transform into the hood-wearing superhero known as Kamen Rider Ghost.
Yeah, that's really hard on your knees. Totally impractical, they all do it.
I'm not sold on the hood aspect itself. Still, I do like the overall design of his main form as the orange really pops against the black body. I cannot say the same for his engine belt, as I find it to be far too bulky for my personal taste. Nevertheless, the design behind the plastic light sheet you see on the prototype at one point looks pretty frightening thanks to its zipper-esque mouth. I wish it had looked like that throughout the entire show. The 15 icons Takeru must collect are all based on real-life heroes, such as Miyamoto Musashi, Oda Nobunaga, Isaac Newton, Robin Hood, the Brothers Grimm, King Tut, and Thomas Edison. Wait, what? Thomas Edison was not a hero. He was a conniving thief. Why is he here? Okay, that scene alone makes it worth it. I will forgive you this time, Toei. At the start, the icons seem to be nothing more than toy gimmicks that give Takeru various forms to market to children, only for the show to turn them into being more than that, as each icon also holds the soul of the person it represents. This can allow for some interesting situations, as I had just shown with the Thomas Edison icon. They can also possess people similarly to the images of Kamen Rider Den-O, with my favorite moment going to Houdini.
ゴーストなどいない。
俺はゴーストですか？フーディーニ殿もゴーストですぞ。
とにかく私が検証しよう。
Each hero gives Takeru a unique attack to utilize in his fight against the villainous Ganmas, be it a bow and arrow from Robin Hood, guns, thanks to Billy the Kid, Musashi provides the swords, while Newton allows Takeru to control gravity. Except for Newton, who is just pulled out of Takeru's ass because the plot required it, all of the icons usually involve some sort of obstacle Takeru must overcome to acquire them.
これ買っては？
あ、これってあの時のニュートンアイコンじゃないか。
ブラブラ言ってる暇ないぞ。
From before? What are you talking about? We never saw him get that. We never saw it appear. What? Upon collecting all 7 Dragon Balls, Takeru is able to summon a wish-granting dragon. Oh, wait, sorry. I'm getting mixed up here. Upon collecting all 15 icons, Takeru is able to summon a giant spiritual voice that will grant him any wish. Normally, you would think this is where Takeru would wish his life back, and under normal circumstances, you would be right. Regretfully, that is not the case here. This is where part of the sloppy writing aspect comes in. At episode 4, Takeru has 87 days remaining. In the next episode, 30 days have gone by even though the episode starts off the day after the ending of episode 4. What the what? Yes, you heard me right. Somehow, 30 days pass within the span of a few hours, leaving Takeru with only 57 days, all of which fly by over the next 7 episodes. Thus, the plot requires Takeru to use his wish to rescue someone else, and then magically reset his counter to 99 thanks to the spirit of his deceased father.
That was a bit anticlimactic.
This reset function also leaves him with a new upgrade form. Later, he acquires another upgrade that merges all 15 icons into one form where he can summon their respective hero to assist him in combat. His final form turns him into a sparkly silver being donning a white coat with the infinity symbol etched all over his body. I can't say I love his ultimate form, but I've seen worse. My favorite of all of Takeru's core forms is his Boost Ghost one he received from his father, as the black engravings are vibrant against the red body. Takeru's main cohorts include his childhood friend Akari Sukamura, the monk who runs his dad's temple Onari Yamanochi, Onari's disciples Norita Kisarazu and Shibuya Hachioji, Sage, and a ghost assistant known as Urizen. Hikaru Osawa, Takayuki Yanagi, Reo Kanshuji, Takuya Mizuguchi, and Naoto Takanaka portray these buddies. Garo fans may recognize Takanaka as the cigarette horror in the first episode to Makai Senki. Urizen is voiced by Aoi Yuki. Anime fans have heard Yuki's voice in the likes of Fate Grand Order, Overlord, My Hero Academia, Yokai Watch, One Punch Man, Boogie Pop and others, Pokemon, and she also played the child version of Mari in Kamen Rider Fives.
何がよっしゃじゃ、何が無事生還じゃ。おい。
なんだよ。
だから急がないと信長ゴーストが生まれそうなんだって。
忘れてた。
Moving on, Takeru's friends are all over the place when it comes to development and personality based on who the writer of the episode is. At the beginning of the show, Onari and Akari are absolutely unbearable to deal with, as Onari always acts extremely spastic as if he forgot to take his meds. It also didn't help that the camera would get up close and personal when he was spazzing out. While Akari is always stating she cannot believe something supernatural is occurring even when it happens right in front of her face.
タケルが死んでるなんて信じない。変身だってありえない。化学変化や物理変化ならともかく、ゴーストを取り込んで武蔵になるなんて。きっと暗示をかけられて騙されてるのよ。
Hey, you know what? Akari would be a perfect member for TAC. Fortunately, Akari grows up as the series progresses as she decides to approach everything that is occurring scientifically and works to prove it isn't mystical. She invents a device that renders all ghosts visible and in time turns it into a weapon to use against the Ganma. Of course, this endeavor becomes moot in the second half of the show, as it seems like the writers just gave up on having the Ganma be invisible. The other hard part is sometimes Akari's personality will regress to what it was early in the series, just out of the blue for an episode or two, before reverting her back to the way she had progressed. Nevertheless, she went from being the biggest annoyance to one of the better characters, even though Osawa never seemed to improve from an acting standpoint. I regret to say the same cannot be said for Onari, who is hands down my least favorite character in the entire show. There was little to nothing for Yanagi to work with, but goddamn did the dude try their hardest to give the best performance possible. Now that's not to say Onari didn't have some good moments throughout, as there were bits and pieces where I legitimately liked the character, specifically one that revolved around a secondary villain.
こんなことして後悔するぞ。
まあそう突っ張らずに。節操も昔はいろいろありましたが。
It's just that, again, none of the writers seemed to know what to do with him, and depending on who was writing him, he would become very convulsive. Narita and Shibuya didn't do too much over the course of the series, though Shibuya did have a pair of episodes to his name where we learned about his family life and what drove him to work at the temple. They were good characters, they just didn't bring anything extraordinary to the table. Now Sage, on the other hand, was a lot of fun. He had a lot of snark to him and would have a funny way of mentioning something he had forgotten to do so previously, as seen here.
言い忘れてたけど、99日の間に15個のアイコンを探し出さないと生き返れないからね。
そんな大切なことはちゃんと言っておいてよ。
Additionally, he would just randomly show up wearing hilarious costumes that made it a treat to see whenever he appeared.
いつもそう簡単にうまくいくとは限らんぞ。今回は一筋縄ではいかない。
Sage is comic relief done right. As for Urizen, he's about as helpful as a cat. He does occasionally assist Takeru by summoning a giant lizard ghost ship thing from time to time. Aside from that, he's quite useless.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
It also seems like the writers forgot about the ghost ship critter, considering how rarely it was ever used. Now, given that this is a modern Kamen Rider series, naturally there are multiple riders to be had. The first to appear is the brooding rider who starts off as a villain under the name of Kamen Rider Specter, Makoto Fukami.
Yes, I thought I saw a specter at your shoulder.
Ryosuke Yamamoto does a fantastic job pulling off this villain who becomes a hero as the man appears to be able to act under any writing style, no matter how convoluted his character would become. That's not to say Makoto is as inconsistent as Akari and Onari, but there are moments where it seemed like the show was waiting for a decision to be made on how he would act. Makoto and his sister were accidentally transported to the Ganma world by an experiment that went awry with Takeru's father, and Makoto initially believes it was intentional. Thus, he trained as a Ganma soldier and came to Earth to collect the 15 icons to help his sister, who is played by Kirame Pink's Mio Kudo.
ふみば、昨日はありがとう。久しぶりのふみばのたこ焼き、美味しかったよ。
またいつでもおいで。昔みたいにね。はい。
I rather like the design of Specter's main form and how he has 2 horns on his head as opposed to Takeru's 1. I'm also torn as to whether or not I prefer his Nobunaga form thanks to it being purple, or the Tutankhamun one, which utilizes a freaking scythe. Either way, ya can't go wrong with them. His first upgrade form comes into play thanks to Houdini, who introduces him to bondage.
You are aware there are children watching.
The best part about this form is it allows him to fly despite the budget clearly not being able to handle this aspect. After this, Makoto's final form has a bit more pizzazz in the design department, which looks pretty damn badass. Again, purple. Makoto also looked up to Takeru's dad as being his real father, since his apparently walked out on he and his sister when they were children. Last but not least is the brooding villain who turns good, deemed Kamen Rider Necrom. Yeah, they're not exactly playing for originality in this aspect, but you know what? At least he has an excellent introduction. Alan is hands down the best character in the entire show. Not only is Hayato Isomura's performance solid overall, but he is hands down the most fleshed out character in the show's entirety. Alan kicks Ghost off as the mysterious observer who is on Earth to oversee the Ganma invasion, only for a lot of crap to happen that sees him becoming a hero. As time went on, Alan found himself falling in love with the Earth thanks to its blue sky and vivid beauty around it. Okay. He actually ends up wanting to save the planet thanks to an old lady who introduced him to takoyaki. So therefore, he wants to save the planet for takoyaki. Now that is something I could totally relate to. Except in my case, it would be gyoza, not takoyaki. There's really more to it than that, which would require some major spoilers, and I'd rather you experience the best pieces of the series for yourself. Let's just say it's very heart-wrenching for a character who ends up experiencing what it means to be human for the very first time.
私は死ぬのか。
死にません。
嘘だ。本当のことを言ってくれ。
アラン様、これはただの筋肉痛です。
As Necrom, he is initially able to control Ganma foot soldiers like puppets. He can also feed on them to power his suit. Later, that ability becomes moot and he learns to work with the brothers Grimm and Sanzo icons as opposed to controlling them like servants.
共に戦ったのは家来ではない。仲間だ。
Nevertheless, I would love to have a henshin device that says this to me.
Yes, sir.
Except I wouldn't want it to be so damn bulky. The design itself is a bit odd, as I can't say I'm a fan of the scuba diver-like head. Oddly enough, the colors work, despite their initial vulgarity on the eyes. Ellen does have an older brother, who I will cover when I talk about the villains. The villains have discovered a means to stop war and death, and they want to do the same to our world. By invading it. Through war and death. The concepts behind the Ganma are interesting, and I enjoyed the way they were slowly introduced into the show, yet their execution leaves a lot to be desired. For the most part, the Ganma are very flat when it comes to character growth and motivations. Alan's brother, Adao, played by Akihiro Mayama, wants to take over the Earth because that's what he wants to do. He believes his father lost sight of Ganma's goals and takes control of the Empire himself. He declares Alan a traitor to the nation, and that's as far as his character goes. He's very one-dimensional, and his entire scheme rips off one of the worst plots in modern Doctor Who history.
私となるのだ。
Like, seriously? We just spent like 20 or so episodes building up to your master plan, and all it is a ripoff of the Master's plan from Doctor Who? Oh, for Christ's sake. His sister Aaliyah, who doesn't seem to believe in what Adele is doing, spends most of the series either just sitting down in a chair criticizing Adele or walking down a hallway criticizing Adele. That's all she ever does. The biggest contribution she has to the story is sometimes informing Alan of what is happening on her end, while also being the one who rescued Makoto and Kanan when they found themselves a part of the Ganma world.
あなたがいなければ俺は生きていないでしょう。妹も生き返ることはできなかった。ありがとうございます。
Beyond this, she's just as flat as the paper she was written on. There are a few additional secondary characters that show up from time to time, which includes the Magistrate, who is totally not Sage.
この私と同じ顔？そんなイケメンがこの世に存在するのか。ぜひとも会ってみたいな。
A warrior named Javert.
まとめて教育してやる。
Another soldier named Gyro, or is it pronounced Giro? And Ganma's top scientist, Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
But they told me it was Igor.
Well, they were wrong then, weren't they?
Like with the vast majority of villains, they're more bark than they are bite. I don't know what it is about this show, but they will introduce these villains who seem quite threatening in their initial appearance, only for them to become downgraded as the episodes progress. It happens to every single one of these bad boys. Igor gets it the worst as he gets slapped by Akari at one point, and that becomes his defining character trait.
いい加減にしなさい。バリータはね、KMS。
しまった、動揺しすぎて姿を消しました。
唯一無二の頭脳よ。許せない。
いつもその手には。
The intensity of his threat level is diminished by this one act alone. What is even worse is the writers seem to have no idea what they wanted to do with Igor. He hatches this scheme to steal everyone's soul by taking over a huge software corporation that is totally not Apple and takes control of its CEO that is totally not Steve Jobs by the name of Steve Bills, played by New Yorker Thane Kemmis, who you may know from the first Garl spin-off that featured Zero.
ですが、私にはそこまでの権限は。
大丈夫です。実力で受かってみせます。
As for your plan, Igor, do you not know what a user agreement is? Because people pretty much willingly give up their souls with every device. Have you never seen South Park? I should also mention the actors behind this lot of Ganma characters. Javert is played by Sotaru Yasuda, who is Geki Chopper in Geki Ranger. Suit actor Seiji Takaiwa is Gyro, while drama actor Hiroshi Yamamoto seen to make his Toku debut as Igor. There is one scene where you do have to feel bad for Igor though, as he has to kneel before Adele, who is barking orders to him while naked.
ついに力の根源と一つになられたのですね。
デミアはどうなっている？
I've got nothing on this one. And that's the naked truth. The monsters of the week tend to be based on some sort of real-world object like a sword, an airplane, a radio receiver, and a painter who becomes a vital character as he would rather paint than fight, showcasing that not all of the Ganma are evil by nature.
Hello, I'm Bob Ross, and I'd like to welcome you to the 29th Joy of Painting series. Just let your imagination take you anywhere you want to go.
This would also become a reoccurring theme as the origins behind the citizens of Ganma world are further explored, something you don't see done very often. The biggest detriment is that the show kind of gives up on its monsters by the halfway point and just starts to reuse the same ones over for the remainder of the series. This could have worked as during the second half, Adele gains access to these stone tablets that can take on their own monstrous forms called Ganmizers. Unfortunately, despite there being 15 tablets, only 5 of them ever take a physical manifestation, and they are reused to the point where you want to beat yourself over the head in frustration due to this. There is one scene where the others take on a form, which sees half of them just being CGI circles, while the other half are CGI weapons. Are you freaking kidding me? Actually, this could have made for an interesting plot point. They could have had it that the 5 monsters wield the others as weapons and magical spells, utilizing them in a combination of attacks that complement the abilities to each of the heroic icons the riders use. Nevertheless, none of this ever happens, so it is a moot point to dwell on. You've probably noticed by now that this series has grunts. That's cool. There is one more villain to briefly talk about, a man by the name of Chikaru Saionji. Saionji was a former colleague of Takeru's father and betrayed the man to the Ganma. Saionji accompanies Alan to Earth for the first attempt at taking it over by collecting the icons. He's such a terribly written villain that that's all there is to talk about. Meh. Next. The effects and music. Like the show itself, the effects work is all over the place, while Go Sakabe's soundtrack is absolutely stunning. The music found within the show is just all around amazing. Every tune has this industrial tone to it that makes it feel as mechanical as the show's central themes revolving around science and technology. Plus, it features an ominous dread that goes hand in hand with the supernatural aspects it entails. The Rider themes are as engaging as they are energetic, specifically the one belonging to Necrom.
人の命を互いに奪い合っているのが人間ではないか。それは人間同士でいがみ合うのがそんなに楽しいのか。
This would be something Sakabe would repeat in 01, and it worked there just as much. You need someone like Sakabe on your team to distract the audience from poorly written material, as you will often find yourself ignoring the negatives while being immersed in musical bliss. I wish I could say the same for the opening theme song by Kishidan, Warera Omo Yue ni Warera Ari, but alas, I cannot. It's not necessarily a bad song by any means, just not one that does any favors to my ears. And I feel it completely contradicts the sounds the series itself provides. As for the effects work, as I said, it's all over the place. There is an excessive amount of CGI that can get really distracting, as is the case whenever Takeru calls out his giant lizard ghost ship thing. Also, for being a series revolving around death and horror, there really isn't all that much in the way of atmosphere and horror-esque elements. They royally missed the mark on this one, as the show could have benefited from endless nighttime battles to give it that extra punch that could have set it apart from its Kamen Rider brethren. Instead, it plays everything safe and is often set during the daytime with an occasional night shot. What's even worse is the final battle would have been at night had the monster not used a magical ability to lighten the sky up to look like it was mid-afternoon. At least the Ganma world had some alterations with the red sky that was hounded in an endless storm. Too bad everything else looked like your normal run-of-the-mill locations and sets, just with a video filter over them. Lastly, even the camera work is all over the place in quality control. The first several episodes feature an unnerving amount of camera angles, as if the director couldn't decide what position he wanted a camera placed in and had them change its angle every 20 seconds. Thankfully, it got better after the first few episodes and occasionally provided some good motions during fights. It's just a shame that the best moments were few and far between. There's also this wonderful shot from the belt's perspective. The episodes. In spite of the sloppy writing, episodes did feature a wide array of entertainment, good or bad. It's just too bad there were too many cooks in the kitchen for Ghost that kept the show inconsistent in tone and execution, as if these cooks rarely communicated with each other. I already talked about the ineptitude known as pacing, thanks to plot points that sped by way too fast, as if Fukuda did not know he had signed up for a year-long show. However, it also suffered from those that overstayed their welcome, as was the case with the plot between Igor and Steve Bills, and the one in regard to Adele and the Ganmizers, which should have ended several episodes sooner, with the Ganmizers becoming the central villain for the last act of the series, as opposed to what might have been the last minute. And then there's Takeru's time limit, which never made sense thanks to the lack of time progression throughout most episodes. I think there was only one episode that actually demonstrated several days passing over the course of its story, which was very late into the series. And then there was the excessive rate in which Takeru acquired his icons, which sometimes had two icons emerging in a single episode. None of it made any sense, and the storytelling was extremely choppy from time to time, especially in the first quarter. I also believe they forgot to have Takeru save 3 people from the Ganmizers at the end of the series, as there were 3 buddies of his that they kidnapped and took the forms of, and then we never saw him rescue them. Yeah, like I said, I think they forgot that plot point. With all that said, there are only 2 episodes I truly downright hated. The first of which was episode 4, which sees Urizen pulling the Newton icon out of thin air and handing it to Takeru as a portion of the city that had been elevated from its earthly settlement is slowly descending back to its roots. The second one is the crossover episode with Duo Ego titled Appearance, the Mysterious Warrior. In this one, Onari is taken over by the Goemon icon, who makes him act way more bombastic than usual and not in the fun kind of way. Fuck me. It features a porcupine shocker monster that Takeru somehow recognizes, even though the series never once showed him learning anything about shocker. Duo Ego just randomly appears out of the blue without any rhyme or reason for it to help Takeru overcome this prickly pest.
どうしてここに？いや、偶然だよ。でもよかった。さっきの借りを返せるな。
None of it makes any sense. The worst part is the episode cannot be skipped as it features some vital development for Alan after just having been ousted from the Ganma. Sadly, while there were a lot of elements throughout the show I did enjoy, there was only one episode that I can truly say I completely loved, and that was episode 6, Destiny, Reviving Melody. A musician's sister has grown worried about her brother's obsession with finding a perfect composition, while the sound around him will often become non-existent. It turns out he is being manipulated by a Ganma who is using his talents to forge the Beethoven icon. The brilliance of this episode comes in the form of the monster's ability, being able to manipulate sound. Early on, he shuts off Akari mid-rant. That act alone is praiseworthy. It doesn't stop there, as the highlight of the episode comes from the first fight against Ghost, which has him turning all sound off. I haven't seen something this clever done with sound since the first time Terry fought Shriek in Batman Beyond. Overall, as I said, this episode was ingenious in his execution, hence why it remained my favorite throughout Ghost's entirety. Oh, and I can't help but think of this anytime Takeru used the Beethoven power. The movies and specials. There are a lot of movies and specials to cover, most of which are not worthy of your time. There are a bunch of minisode specials that are pretty meh. One sees Ghost and Specter obtaining writer-based icons, which sounds cooler than it really is. The only special worth watching is a 4-parter centered around Alan.
これはたこ焼きというものです。たこ焼き。美味しいです。アラン様は食べられないのでしたね。
なんだこの矮小な人間は。なぜこんな奴と行動しなければならないというのか。何も知らないお坊ちゃまが。With that said, the first movie is a crossover film between Ghost and Drive, and it is hands down the worst Kamen Rider movie I have ever seen to date. Hell, it might be the worst Toku movie I have ever watched. I have watched bad Kamen Rider movies. I have watched boring Kamen Rider movies. But this was like bad and boring, decide to get married and reproduce one of the biggest atrocities imaginable. The plot is incomprehensible. All the characters act like utter morons, particularly Takeru, who just runs around chasing after a monster early on and swings his sword like a crazed maniac.
Then Takeru and Tomare, Drive, get sent to the year 2005 where they team up with Takeru's father for some reason. This movie is so terrible that it couldn't even kill Takeru's father right. At the beginning of Ghost, we see Takeru's father dying outside, and later who killed him. Here, he dies at the hand of a movie-exclusive monster we will never hear from again, and underground no less. What the hell? Other crap happens that doesn't really matter because the writer of this film sure as hell didn't. Then there are other scenes that make little sense, like the one here between Sage and Tomare's boss.
私もね、お盆に帰ったんですけどね、戻りましてね、手品をやって暮らしてますよ。元気そうですね。元気だよ。
Unless you have to watch every Kamen Rider movie, do not watch this bullshit dumpster fire that feels like a complete middle finger to anyone who has watched either of these shows, as clearly the writer is not a Kamen Rider writer. In fact, you can say he's not a common writer. The theatrical film features Alan's deceased older brother who is like Takeru and resides as a ghost. He decides to outdo Takeru by collecting 100 heroic icons in order to conquer the world.
あなたは死んだはずでは。
確かに私は死んだ。だが今はゴーストとしてここにいる。
It's pretty standard for a Kamen Rider film and is necessary to watch before the finale of the series. Watch it between episodes 42 and 43. The icons take up human forms, which has Musashi being played by Shinginger, Kamen Rider 5, and Mega Monster Battlestar Mitsuru Karahashi. It has a few notable moments, such as a Napoleon form. And for some reason, X8 makes an appearance in one scene. That was random, but then so was his appearances in the final episodes to the TV series of Ghost. For some reason, X8 just randomly pops up there without any rhyme or reason, and I don't know why. He just does. Overall, while this film is still not all that exciting, it's certainly better than that atrocious crossover movie with Drive. Speaking of crossover films, next on the list is one that features the return of Hongo Takeshi titled Kamen Rider 1. Hongo returns to Japan to rescue Tachibana's granddaughter from Shocker and an opposing faction, Nova Shocker. No, that ain't confusing. I'm not exactly sure why there needed to be two teams, considering the movie didn't really do much with there being two teams. This movie was pretty damn awesome as it was well paced, plotted, held a lot of excellent character moments like seeing Sage in a dress. And then when Onari started to mock Akari for being jealous of the granddaughter.
非科学的この上ないわ。どんな科学式なの？元素記号何？
元素記号は
何？
L O V E.
Seeing Ichigo returning in a new suit. Another moment of this series that made me think of Batman Beyond. Among other excellent bits. The biggest detriment to the film is battles will often just end off screen. There will be a battle happening, and then the movie will just cut to later on after all parties have returned to their base of operations. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that part. The last film is centered around Specter, set 2 years after the events of the series. It's an okay movie that should have been much longer, as the villain hardly has any time to be fleshed out. There's also a plot twist regarding Makoto that M. Night Shyamalan would be proud of, as it comes out of nowhere and isn't given the time it needed to ferment. It left me scratching my head as to whether it was the truth or a lie, even though it does make a subplot from the series more plausible. Makoto also gets a new form at the end because of course he does. Despite its shortcomings, especially with a very rushed first arc, Ghost turned out to be quite entertaining, warranting a fair 3 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. It will never be anywhere near being one of my favorite Kamen Rider series, yet I would rather rewatch Ghost over Decade or Wizard if given the choice. If you're curious and can ignore sloppy writing, then by all means, check it out. You'll most likely find some sort of enjoyment out of it. Until next time, bye.